Hello, my name is Tim Coates, and I'm going to be taking you through this video presentation on Lesson 1 of CO241 Web Databases. In this first lesson, we're going to be covering Chapter 1 in your book, which is titled Introduction to Web Development with PHP. What we're going to do in this particular video is we're going to take a high-level view of all of the technologies and the tools that we're going to be using this semester to build the web applications that we've talked about in the introduction video that I presented to you in the opening week. So without further delay, I want to dive in here and take a look at some slides that show you some diagrams that I think you'll find interesting to just sort of explain what it is we're going to be doing and how we're going to approach it. I'm also going to get into using some of the tools and how to actually structure things on your computer for this course, and then we'll talk also about how to actually bring up a web page with PHP in it, and then how to deploy it to a web server. So to start with here, let's take a look at the high-level view of the web. This is a web application. A web application is basically like a set of web pages that are all connected together to accomplish something. So when you go onto a website, you land on the home page. Now, if it's a static website, the pages never change, and so we don't usually refer to that as a web application. A web application is really something that there's code behind, there's some intelligence to it, and it's going to accomplish something for you. So, for instance, if you've got TurboTax and you're going to do your taxes, so you're going to log on to their website and start working through that process. It's going to be asking you all kinds of questions. You're going to be answering them. It's going to be calculating your tax return. And we would call that a web application. On the other hand, if you're just going to visit TurboTax's website and you're just looking at a bunch of static pages, we wouldn't really call that an application per se. So here you've got a web application. And so what you've got here is, first off, your web server. That's the central piece of this, really. The web server delivers the web pages to the clients over the internet. So this computer right here holds the web pages. They get delivered across the internet out to the clients. How those pages get generated is one of the main subjects of this course. But for now, we're just going to say that the web server delivers web pages out to the clients. Now, when you're building the type of web applications we're going to be building, they're going to be connected to a database. In a fully and properly designed architecture, we typically put the database on a separate computer, and we call that the database server. And you can see that here on the right. So the database server obviously houses the databases and provides a connection to them. There are a lot of different reasons that we do this. One of them is for security, one of them is for performance, and there are others, but it's always good to separate the web and the database on two physical machines if you can. And we'll spend some more time talking about why that is later. But for the purposes of our course, we're not going to do that. So I'm not going to ask you to get two laptops and put your databases on one and your web server on the other. It'd be kind of crazy to do that, right? So in this course, we're going to have one computer serve both purposes. So your laptop or your desktop computer is going to be the web server and the database server both together. So that said, we think of the server for both the web and the database. Their job is to provide web content to the clients out through the internet, and they work together. So the web server has web pages in it, and in our case we'll be writing them in PHP. PHP is able to assemble or build custom HTML. So for instance, if there's a web page that comes up and the user is asked to log in, they provide their credentials. The web server takes and has some code in it that goes to the database, opens it up, checks to see if the credentials are valid, and if they are, it lets the user in to a welcome page, let's say, and it puts their name up on the top. It says, hello, comma, welcome, comma, Tim, or whatever. So it's customized web content that has been built with code in conjunction with the database content. Sometimes email servers come into play if the web server wants to send out an email. It will take advantage of that via an email server to construct and send out the emails. And again, it's put on a separate box to, again, maintain security and maintain integrity. So those are the different pieces to the puzzle here. So with that, let's take a little bit of a bigger picture look here. What you see here are, it looks like a very busy slide. What this really is the architecture of the web or the internet. Now if you look back at the first slide, the internet is this cloud. If you could fly into that cloud, what you would see are a whole bunch of computers all connected together. And that's really all the internet is. It's just a network of computers. It's a worldwide network. It's very large. But if your computer sitting in this box over here, and you type in an address to a website, and the address to that website is connected to, or tied, I should say, the address is tied to this server way down over here on the bottom right corner, then you're the client sitting up in the upper left. The server is way down here in the lower right side. When you type in your web address, say this is Amazon.com, so you type in your address bar www.amazon.com. We call that a URL. A URL is something that's somewhat human-friendly. It's a readable address in text. That URL gets converted into what's called an IP address, which is a numeric address. I'm sure you've seen these before. They're composed by 3 digits and a dot, and that goes until the last 2 digits in the last segment. Well, essentially, when you type in Amazon.com, that gets converted into an IP address. That's like the address to the server. So once you have that IP address, you know where you have to go. And so basically, you're going to be going through a pathway to get down to the server in the lower right corner. The magic of the internet is that how you get there is quite variable. The network will take you there in the most efficient way it can, but it isn't always guaranteed to take you there the same pathway every time. Because there are so many computers connected to the internet, you're able to get a huge reach out anywhere in the world with it. So the internet, again, think of it just as a great big network. There's nothing really all that magical about the internet. It's pretty amazing when you think about it, how instantly we have access to things now across the world on these web servers, but it really is just a network, and you should think of it that way. Now, static pages are, again, we've talked about this, they're HTML files. And unless you're writing things in JavaScript, they're just not very interactive. They come up, they show text, they show images. You can click on hyperlinks. There may be a little bit of JavaScript thrown in to do some animated effects or show some menus or whatever. But the pages are the same for everybody. So you're the client here on the left. You type in an address, and it's called an HTTP request, hypertext protocol. That protocol establishes a set of rules for one computer to talk to another. And that request is sent out to the web server by way of an IP address, the server will then deliver the HTML file back out to the web browser via a response. So there's a request that's made out to the server and a response sent back over to the client. With dynamic pages, things are a little bit different. The client makes the HTTP request to the web server, and now instead of bringing up an HTML document, you're going to be bringing up a PHP document, which we also call a PHP script, because a PHP script is actually composed of code, and that code serves many different purposes. One of the purposes of the code is to connect to and open up the database, or databases connected to the web server. So for instance, this PHP script may take from the web browser a username and a password, and then there'll be code to open up a database to look to see if that credential can be located in the database, and if so, then the PHP script will build a web page and more than likely customize it in some way for that person who's logged in, so that the response coming back out to the client is going to be HTML. The trick is, or the magic if you want to say, is that that HTML coming back over is not static. It's been dynamically generated however that PHP script dictated it should be. So how do you set all this stuff up, right? How do you actually make your computer, if you want to play this game of building PHP and building a database and all this stuff and having this all work, right? You're thinking, well, great, I've got this desktop computer, or I've got this laptop, how do I do this? What we have to do is we have to take your computer and turn it into a web server, and also turn it into a database server. Now, you're serving yourself here, essentially. So the address you're going to be putting into your browser's address bar isn't going to be www.something. Instead, it's going to be localhost. Localhost tells your browser that you're going to connect to the same computer you're sending out from. So the request is being sent to the very same computer. It's not going out across the internet. Obviously, you would only do this when you were building something or testing something out. This wouldn't be applicable if you were putting this out in a production environment. So we have the challenge then is to take your computer and turn it into a web server and a database server. Once that's happened, we can make HTTP requests through our localhost address and treat our computer as though it were a web-enabled system, and it basically will then simulate an actual internet experience. So the first thing we need to be able to do in this course is to learn how to set everything up, get the web server and the database server all set up, and then once we've done that, we can learn about how you actually create the PHP and the database technologies. So I'm going to stop at this point with this first part, and then in the next video I'm going to actually bring up the technologies that are used to get your computer turned into a web server. So we'll see you in the next video.